Good morning or good evening from Washington, D.C. This is Alex Feldman. I'm the President, CEO, and Chairman of the US-ASEAN Business Council, and I'm excited to welcome you to today's panel. We've got a fantastic lineup of panelists, including Congressman Bera, who is represents the California's 7th Congressional District and is the chair of the Asia, Pacific, and Non-Proliferation Subcommittee of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. We also have Todd Abrajano, the Chief Operating Officer and Head of Agency for the U.S. Trade and Development Agency. We have David Trulio, the Counselor to the Chairman and the Senior Vice President for Programs on China and Transformational Exports at the United States Export-Import Bank. And we have Susan B. Chodakewitz from Nathan Associates, the President and CEO, as well as Shane TedJarati from Honeywell, who is the President of Global High Growth Markets. With that, it's my great honor to introduce the subject matter for this panel, and through any lens, there is no more consequential region in the world for the United States than the Indo-Pacific. Over 50% of the world's population lives and works in the Indo-Pacific, with a total population of over 2.7 billion people. 7 of the 10 largest standing armies in the world are found in the Indo-Pacific, along with 6 nuclear powers. From an economic point of view, 4 of the 5 largest economies on Earth are located in the Indo-Pacific, with a total GDP of 35 trillion US dollars. From a trade point of view, 9 of 10 of the largest maritime ports in the world are located in the Indo-Pacific. 60% of total maritime trade flows through its waters. And total trade volume between the countries of the Indo-Pacific and the world exceeds 746 billion US dollars. And from an investment perspective, the United States FDI to date in the Indo-Pacific countries is over 930 billion US dollars. It's safe to say from now well into the future, there is no more important region of the world than the Indo-Pacific for the United States, and I'm pleased to moderate this exceptional panel. And we'll start with the chair of the Asia, the Pacific, and Non-Proliferation Subcommittee of the House of Representatives, Foreign Affairs Committee, Congressman Bera. The floor is yours.
Thank you for that introduction. And you did a phenomenal job framing why the Indo-Pacific region is so important, not just for the United States, but also for the globe, based on the global economy, but then also the strategic importance of the region. In my time as chair of the subcommittee on Asia and the Pacific, we certainly have taken an approach to look at how we build these strategic partnerships there. And you're seeing a lot of this move forward. You're seeing the Quad come together, which is the United States, Japan, Australia, and India, looking at both issues of trade, but also maritime security and freedom of navigation. And then in my travels there, over the past year, to places like Malaysia, to Nepal, to Sri Lanka, you see young democracies that are also emerging that, it is not just in the United States' interest to help them grow, but also in the region's interest. And then, obviously you see the politics behind the United States and China. And the truth is, how Congress views this in our conversations with countries in the region, it's not the United States or China. All the countries in the region are going to do business and have relationships with both countries, but is there a way to move forward on a rules-based order with some predictability, et cetera, that will help all of us grow? So competition's not a bad thing. Actually, competition often is a good thing. It brings out the best in us, but we want to avoid conflict. And that I think is incredibly important. And lastly, as we see our elections coming up, and we think about what 2021 brings us in the midst of this pandemic. It really will take all of us working together to defeat this virus. A virus doesn't know a country of origin. It doesn't know what religion you are, whether you're Democrat or Republican. we're going to have to work together. And it is my hope as a medical doctor that we can work with the best scientists and best individuals in the region to come up with a vaccine, to figure out how to distribute that vaccine and do it in an economically viable way. So I think the Indo-Pacific is going to be the most vibrant region in the 21st century. I think it has the most possibilities. And the last thing that I'd like to do is, in the 20th century, the United States did have a trans-Pacific strategy and it had a transatlantic strategy. Well, one thing we failed to do was bring those two strategies together. And I think that's certainly possible in this next decade, potentially with a revival of a trans-Pacific partnership trade deal, or whatever we want to call it, and potentially a revival of TTIP. So I'll stop with that and I'll turn it back over to you, Alex.
Well, thanks so much, Congressman. And certainly the business community looks forward to working with you on that concept and seeing trade grow and having a trade strategy in the Indo-Pacific going forward. I'd like now to turn to Todd Abrajano and David Trulio respectively from the Trade and Development Agency, as well as Ex-Im Bank, to give us their perspective of how the executive branch is looking at this incredible region and sort of how their agencies and play into the conversation that Congressman Bera so eloquently set us up for. So we'll start with Todd, and then after Todd's done, we'll go to David. So Todd, please enlighten us on the Trade and Development Agency.
Thank you, Alex. Appreciate you for moderating today. I'm grateful to be on this panel, and our agency, USTDA, is honored to again sponsor this extraordinary forum for the second year in a row. Last year we were in Bangkok, and it was an amazing event, and I know this event will be just as great. My thanks also to all of our partners for making this event possible. As you've just heard from both Alex and Congressman Bera, the U.S. government continues to increase its engagement with our Indo-Pacific partners. And personally, I am pleased with the trajectory that we're seeing from the U.S. government in that region. The global pandemic is creating strong economic headwinds, which is all the more reason to assure both our overseas partners and U.S. industry that the United States is committed to the Indo-Pacific region's long-term economic growth by delivering quality infrastructure solutions that are built to last. One of the key challenges we hear is that while financing is available for infrastructure projects, there really is a shortfall of bankable projects. And that's where USTDA comes in. We're the only U.S. government agency that works with the private sector to provide American-led solutions, laying the groundwork for quality infrastructure in developing and middle-income countries. That's what we've been doing for almost 3 decades. USTDA builds lasting partnerships that create winning results. U.S. companies gain access to new export opportunities in the world's fastest growing and most dynamic economies. Our overseas partners gain insight into the most innovative U.S. solutions to meet their infrastructure goals when they work with USTDA. As a result of our efforts, we've seen our return on investment grow to its highest level ever. This year, we just announced a couple of weeks ago that our ROI is 1 to 112, meaning that for every dollar that we invest, we see $112 back in U.S. exports. And the future holds even more promise. The importance of the Indo-Pacific strategy and the demand from our partners is why USTDA is doubling our impact in the region by funding more projects and growing our physical presence throughout the region. We're adding staff on the ground in country. We're adding offices in different countries that we have not had offices before, and so we're very proud of that fact. Since last year's Indo-Pacific Business Forum, USTDA has launched 27 new project preparation activities all across the region that will support quality infrastructure in key sectors like energy, ICT, transportation, and healthcare. And these activities include a breadth of tools that we utilize at USTDA, including feasibility studies, technical assistance, pilot projects, and workshops and conferences just like this one. As one example of our assistance, we have strongly backed Prime Minister Modi's Smart Cities effort in India. leading the USG's effort to position U.S. companies and technologies at the forefront of this initiative. US-TDA's program introduced Tata Power to Honeywell Building Solutions, automated demand response system technologies, and smart meters. And by partnering with Tata Power, US-TDA assistance positioned U.S. companies to help modernize its electrical grid by introducing U.S. technologies that are resilient, providing modern, scalable solutions to reduce outages, curb losses, and help utilities better engage with their customers. And as a result, Tata Power has nearly doubled its grid connections and emerged as one of India's leading electricity distribution utilities. Honeywell has also benefited through the sale of smart meters and energy-efficient technologies. So this is just one example of many. US-TDA's specialized mission is truly relevant in these economic times. The agency is a targeted tool for more precise aid of international development. And I believe our Indo-Pacific vision represents the best overseas opportunity, industry creativity, and really true partnership with our friends throughout the region. So that's just a brief introductory of what we're doing throughout the Indo-Pacific, and I'll turn it over to David to talk about what XM is up to as well.
And, you know, obviously, David, XM and TDA go hand in hand, and where TDA opens the door, XM helps American companies walk through and particularly be more competitive against the tough competition we have in the Indo-Pacific. So, David, please.
Well, thank you very much, Alex and Todd and Congressman and distinguished members of the panel. Look, U.S. engagement in the Indo-Pacific is a top priority of the Trump administration. Indeed, the president envisions a free and open Indo-Pacific as a place where sovereign and independent nations with diverse cultures can, can all prosper side by side and thrive in freedom and peace. I'm happy to say that the Export-Import Bank of the United States, or EXIM, as we're often referred to, has a really important role to play. In fact, I'm pleased to share that EXIM Chairman Kimberly Reed, her travels this month include visits to Indonesia, to Burma, Thailand, Laos, Vietnam, and Japan. For those who might not be all that familiar with EXIM, I'll start by very briefly explaining what we do. We are the official export credit agency of the United States. We're an independent executive branch agency with a mission of supporting American jobs by facilitating the export of U.S. goods and services. And that mission fits perfectly into the administration's strategy for advancing two-way trade and investment in the Indo-Pacific. So when private sector lenders are unable or unwilling to provide financing, EXIM fills in the gap by providing necessary financing tools. Those include export credit insurance that can extend credit terms to international customers and insure against non-payment by international buyers, includes working capital loan guarantees that guarantee financing to credit-worthy international buyers for purchases of U.S. capital goods and services, project and structured financing, and direct loans. So there's a really wide range of offerings. We can do business in most markets, regardless of whether they are in a developed or in a developing country. But I do want to note, we are not an aid agency, and our charter requires that all transactions that EXIM authorizes demonstrate a reasonable assurance of repayment. My colleagues and I look forward to working with our partners across the Indo-Pacific to positively impact the lives of millions of people by connecting them to quality made in USA goods and services, and when needed, to the financing of those products and services to make deals possible. In fact, we're very proud that since 2010, EXIM provided well over $40 billion in support of American businesses in the Indo-Pacific region. So in wrapping up, though, I do want to point out that when EXIM was reauthorized back in December, Congress directed that the agency establish a program on China and transformational exports with the purpose of supporting the extension of loans, guarantees, and insurance at rates and on terms and other conditions that are fully competitive with those established by the People's Republic of China. And Congress intended the program to advance the comparative leadership of the United States with respect to China. And this is a program I lead, so I'm very passionate about it, which I hope you can pick up on. But the program is there also to support U.S. innovation, employment, and technological standards through 10 crucial areas critical for long-term prosperity and security. Those include wireless technology, including 5G, artificial intelligence, biotechnology, renewable energy, energy efficiency, and even emerging fintech. So in conclusion, I want to underscore that the EXIM team is eager to work with everyone in the audience today to help shape potential new deals early, including opportunities where a competitor is backed by the People's Republic of China. And we want to achieve tangible results in the form of executed deals involving the export of U.S. products and services. So find us at exim.gov, China program at exim.gov. Please feel free to reach out to me, and I look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. And then we're going to move from the executive branch to the private sector. We're going to start with Susan Chodakewitz from Nathan Associates, who's the president and CEO again. Nathan is really a bridge between the executive branch and the private sector and private sector opportunities and realizing those opportunities that the government tries to set up. So Susan, we'll go with you, and then we'll go to our colleague from Honeywell after you. So.
Great. Thanks, Alex. It's really an honor and a pleasure to be part of this panel. And I know we all wish we were on the ground in Hanoi delivering this rather than back in the States. But in terms of spirit, we're with everyone today. Nathan is a private international consulting firm providing economic, analytic, and advisory services to public and private clients. In terms of our public sector work and specifically our development activities, the majority of our work focuses on designing and implementing the economic, policy, legal, and regulatory framework that the U.S. envisions as the platform for transparent and independent growth in the region and around this world. In this way, we help create the proper environment for commercial firms to engage in countries across the region, benefiting both U.S. companies and the countries in which we operate. We do this not only by partnering very closely with our clients who are USTDA and USAID and MCC, but also with our counterparts and with the private sector. And in this way, we think we bring a very holistic and integrated approach to our solutions in the economic development sphere. And we focus not only on trade and investment, but also financial services, women's economic empowerment, gender and social inclusion, and governments. We emphasize skills development and capacity building that tie back to what U.S. and international firms need in the region and in specific countries. I'll just add that we work also in key markets, logistics, infrastructure, energy, in such countries as Vietnam, Myanmar, Indonesia, the Philippines, Laos, Thailand, and Singapore, and support ASEAN and APEC themselves. So the perspective I believe we bring is very deep and very broad. And again, as you said, Alex, we really like to think of ourselves as the bridge between the public and the private sectors. Thanks.
Thank you, Susan. And Shane TedJarati is from Honeywell. He has got decades of experience in the Indo-Pacific region, and Honeywell is both manufacturing, selling products and solutions to countries throughout the region, as you heard from Todd Abrajano earlier. But Shane, can you tell us sort of how Honeywell views the Indo-Pacific and where you see the opportunities and the challenges?
Thank you. Thank you, Alex, and thank you, Todd and David and members of the panel. Just have to say that Todd here does not work for Honeywell, even though it seemed like it. But his comments are really representative of the fact that USTDA and Exim Bank really do work for and in the best interests of the American businesses around the world. Honeywell has a very significant presence in ASEAN and in India, which are critical parts of our high growth regions that are run, which is every region outside of US and Western Europe. We have over 2,000 people in ASEAN, about 13,000 in India, and numerous manufacturing facilities and technology and distribution centers and research and development with headquarters both in Kuala Lumpur and Bangalore. We operate a state-of-the-art cybersecurity lab in Singapore, which serves the whole world. And that tells you how much we regard the region as a friend and an ally of the US. We only have 3 such centers around the world, and one of them is in the Indo-Pacific region. Honeywell is a true software industrial company where we work on energy efficiency, safety, security, performance, and profitability of the companies. And as Todd just mentioned, one of our biggest programs has been the smart cities, especially in India. We're working with more than a dozen cities, and that program is continuing to thrive. We've been running many programs for several years, and in the ASEAN region, we've been working in aerospace, energy, advanced materials, petrochemicals. Our technologies support some of the most important infrastructures, such as Petronas, Petromina, Intel, PTT, etc. And although the COVID situation has really hit us hard, like everybody else, we've really done impressive things, because a quarter of our portfolio is related to safety, security, and masks and PPE, etc., which we have ramped up significantly. The U.S. government has been very helpful, and with US and EXIM advocacy, we have run a lot of good programs. I want to point out to one example being Pertamina in Indonesia with US advocacy, with USTDA and EXIM, with programs in Thailand. And although not in the Pacific region, recently in our Tawi flared gas project in Iraq, USTDA USTDA and EXIM really changed the game for us. I'm really, really thankful for what they did. My couple of things. David mentioned about China. And I know this is about ASEAN, but reality is that China is a very big market and is a great second largest market for us. But at the same time, China is also a competitor around the world. And increasingly, they come in with a complete package of EPC technologies and financing for the entire project, regardless of where the technology and all that comes from. And we'd like to work with EXIM to ensure that we can have a equivalent or better response to that, where some of the restrictions or some of the inadequacies of our program for the new normal, which is Chinese competition around the world, that we can address them. And David, I would really welcome working with you to streamline the programs, because American technologies are terrific, and if we can bring the entire package together in ASEAN, in Central Asia, in Middle East, we can actually develop our businesses much better together. Thank you.
We welcome it, Shane. Look forward to connecting.
Thank you. And Shane, you set up COVID-19, and we're going to come back to that subject. But I'm pleased to note that Congressman Ted Yoho has joined us, and that we have an opportunity to hear from the ranking member on the House Subcommittee on Asia and the Pacific and Nonproliferation, as well as the member from Florida's 3rd District. Congressman Yoho, if you could give us a 2-minute overview, and then we'll get back into the conversation. But we want to bring you in and have you deliver your introductory remarks as well.
Alex, thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and it's good to see everybody. It's a pleasure to join everybody here today in exploring the ways our country can partner with countries in the Indo-Pacific region in leveraging trade and development to create economic opportunity. I'm a strong supporter of targeting U.S. assistance in a way that transitions nations from receiving aid to participating in trade. This is why I helped lead the creation of the Development Finance Corporation, which is an incredible new tool for the United States foreign aid in the way that we can partner up with other countries. We can lend and receive payment in their domestic currency, and then we can leverage that with private equity. And so we can increase. What we did is double what OPEC could lend. We're up to $60 billion, but when we leverage that with other entities and other DFCs, that can become hundreds of billions of dollars. Just last month, the DFC approved $3.6 billion in new investments for development projects around the globe. There's a lot of room for cooperation between our countries on trade and development, especially in that region that is so ripe for growth. And as you said in the very beginning, over half the world's population will be living in that area. The U.S. is also looking forward to further diversifying our supply chains towards country we prefer to do business with. And I've said this often, countries like to do, or business, people like to do business with people they know, they like, and they trust. And I think that applies for nations too. And that's something that we're looking to move our supply chains for national security reasons. And I know a lot of other nations are, because of what we've seen with the pandemic. And then thank you for the opportunity to be here today. And I'm looking forward to engaging the rest of the panel in opportunities for our countries to engage in the Indo-Pacific region, because it is such a strategic and an important area. And we look forward to working and drawing those relationships closer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Congressman. You lead us perfectly into the next segment, which is around COVID-19. And the COVID-19 pandemic presents significant challenges and a few opportunities across multiple areas, including public health, cross-border trade, and supply chains. But it also offers opportunities in digitization. And these are especially prevalent in the highly urbanized Indo-Pacific region, which we're seeing, smart cities come out of and be a solution to some of the challenges. Certainly, they've been a solution to for some countries to the pandemic. But we're in Congress. We're incredibly well represented. Both Congressman Bera as well as Congressman Yoho have looked into medicine from different angles. Congressman Bera is a medical doctor, as we heard earlier, and Congressman Yoho is a veterinary doctor. So we are pleased to have your expertise and your vision on terms of fighting disease. And Congressman Bera, as a medical doctor, through that lens, how do you see these challenges and how can the United States respond? I know the administration has laid out the Health Futures Initiative in ASEAN and Southeast Asia, but there are other opportunities as well. So, Mr. Congressman.
Yeah, very much so. A couple things. Certainly, we can look at some of the ASEAN nations and look at their approach to COVID-19 and some success they've had. And we've been having those conversations, learning from one another. The second area is vaccine research, development, and manufacturing. Logistically, that's going to be a real challenge when you're talking about vaccinating 6 to 7 billion people around the world. So this is a place where U.S. companies can work with, let me use India as an example, where they have a pretty mature vaccine manufacturing sector. It might be Indian companies that are manufacturing the vaccine for other countries in that region. And some of those dialogues are also currently taking place. And then lastly, Congressman Yoho touched a little bit on the supply chain issue. And I do think one of the lessons learned from the pandemic is there was an over-reliance of the supply chain on a single source, in this case, China, where, for some of the early pharmaceutical ingredients, the PPE, et cetera, a lot of that really is dependent on that single source. Well, I think there's opportunities for U.S. companies working with other companies in the region to build redundancy in the supply chain. Certainly, we will onshore some of that, but a lot of it may get reshored to other countries in the region to help both develop their economies, but then also for us to develop our redundancy on critical supplies that are of national security importance. So I think there's a lot in here if we're smart, strategic, and open to dialogue with our like-minded allies in the region.
Thank you, Congressman. Congressman Yoho, from your point of view, how do we meet these challenges that COVID-19 presents? I mean, the DFC has great opportunity, but it's held back a little bit while we try and deal with COVID-19. So how do you see this challenge?
Well, I think it's a great opportunity because with the pandemic, with the COVID-19, it shows where the shortfalls are. And as Dr. Bera pointed out, the chairman, the supply chain, we found out how vulnerable we are in this country. Other countries found that out also. And it's interesting, if you go back to President Obama and President Bush, they both talked about making Congress or having Congress put in legislation so that we could be prepared for the next one. Congress failed to act. Chairman Bera and myself have put a bill in to make sure that the United States is a participant in CEPI, which is so vital to understand the emerging pathogens and to have the United States involved in that so that we can, start looking at these next pathogens that are going to be ready and have the vaccine platform hopefully a lot closer to deployment than where we are with COVID-19. So that's one way. The other way is with DFC able to help invest in countries in the ASEAN region and beyond that to move some of the supply chains, whether it's the APIs, the PPEs, ventilators, and help develop economic investments in those countries that are lower income or moving to middle income. Make those strategic investments via the DFC, where we can partner again with other DFCs and private equity. And I think if we do that strategically, we'll help the region. We'll create more direct finance or development finance from other sources in those regions that are struggling to move up the economic ladder. And by doing that, you're going to create trade. And then the last thing is we have introduced a bill called the Emergency One Health through preparation. And what this does is it coordinates the USDA with HHS, FDA, and all the other entities that are studying human diseases, the Department of Defense. And what we know with epidemics is 7 out of 10 new emerging epidemics start in the animal world, as we've seen with SARS, with MERS, and with COVID. It looks like the epicenter was within the bat community. And so if we know these things, it's so important that we invest now. And so looking at the DFC, the ability to invest with them, USAID, and do strategic investments in the areas so that we can help, with the APIs, with pharmaceuticals and all those other things. And I think it's a boom to those areas. Plus it gives national security and certainty to the ASEAN bloc of nations, knowing that that supply chain has been diversified around the world.
Thank you, Mr. Congressman. I want to turn to Shane because you mentioned PPE and investing, and those are two areas that Honeywell knows well. I also am cognizant of time. We have about 9-10 minutes left. So, Shane, over to you.
Yeah. So a few things. One is, as you know, that in addition to aerospace and oil and gas and healthy buildings, we have also a very robust business in personal protection, masks, and general safety and security. And during the COVID, I have to say that our teams have been working 7/24. We have more than 400 facilities that we were able to actually have all of them open for production, with the exception of one. And this is really amazing. I think everybody was working 7/24. My days used to start at 5 a.m. and not end until late, and everybody else around the world. And we have increased capacity by more than 10x. We put up a factory in the Middle East for mass production in 4 weeks, something that usually takes about a year and a half to complete. So in addition to those, which are about protection of people, physical protection, we've also launched a comprehensive solutions for what we call healthy buildings and healthy airports and healthy airplanes. You might have seen our little robots that go inside the airplanes and do UV lighting to disinfect an airplane in 30 minutes between flights. We're doing the same things in schools now. We're doing the same thing with UV lighting, zapping viruses inside the HVAC systems. People, in addition to a medical solution, which is going to take its time, are going to need to feel more comfortable, not only just wearing masks and gloves and all that, but feeling more comfortable that once they're in a building or in a school, or send their kids or their children to university or school, that they are safe and secure. We have done that, and the Asia-Pacific region is a very big part of it. A lot of our innovation comes in Asia. A lot of our innovation comes in Southeast Asia, and that we're taking to the rest of the world. We have R&D centers in India, in Malaysia, and we're taking those innovations around the world very, very quickly.
Fantastic.
So if anything, this pandemic has made us even work more together because of the urgency of the moment.
Speaking of urgency, I want to get to everyone before we wrap up. And I know that TDA has taken on health as one of its focus areas well before the pandemic, but it still is one of the newest areas. And Todd, I was wondering if you might want to tell us how your efforts might dovetail into a future beyond the COVID-19 pandemic. Yeah.
Sure. Well, thank you for that. The COVID experience has been very interesting for, I think, all of us. But as a government agency trying to figure out how to continue to do the work that we do, it's been incredibly impactful. And so over the last 6-7 months, we've really looked internally at how we can continue to do our work effectively and efficiently and do it in a way that is more resilient. And so one of the recent initiatives that we launched, I actually launched it last month at the XM annual conference, is the Global Infrastructure Resilience Initiative. And that is aimed at helping emerging markets withstand full range of external risks and challenges. The initiative really draws directly from US-TDA's decades-long experience working with US industry to deliver the quality infrastructure solutions that we have all over the world. And it's designed really to help emerging markets plan, finance, procure, and sustain resilient infrastructure utilizing American solutions. We recently held an initial call for proposals, and we received an incredible amount of great project ideas through that call for proposals, so much so that we had to extend the deadline because there was so much interest. And so we're currently evaluating those proposals to see what types of projects we may be able to really dive into here. And the benefit of this is, since we're really sort of early stage, we're helping feed the pipeline for other agencies like XM and DFC for financing on the back end once we can get to implementation. So, we recognize at US-TDA the challenges that exist, and we're trying to do everything we can, not only to focus on the healthcare aspect of COVID and how we can be helpful there, but really across all sectors where we work.
Thanks, Todd. And Susan, again, you're the bridge between Todd's programs and the rest of the federal government and implementation on the ground. You focused on SMEs, and SMEs are really the crux of economies. So maybe you could talk a little bit about COVID situation, how you're building skills and ensuring that these economies are ready for the future.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. And look, I think as we've all said in different ways, right, necessity is the mother of invention. And I think that given where we are with COVID right now, there's an opportunity to reset from both a public perspective as well as a private sector one, right? I think there's a unique opportunity to show this region that there is a commitment that is only going to intensify from the US government, that there's going to be a consistency that goes with the whole of government approach. And that's going to translate, I think, very directly into enhanced private sector engagement and opportunities, and in turn to building and innovating within the local market in the region and in given countries. I think it's really important to recognize that whether it's in Vietnam or in Burma, there are a lot of really interesting programs going on right now that combine digital economy and health, that combine infrastructure and new ways of doing business. So there really is a unique opportunity to catapult further. I would just say in closing, though, we do have to recognize how diverse this region is. It is certainly not monolithic. And we haven't really spoken about the Pacific Islands, but I think we have to recognize that in that area, that sub-region, for example, new and different opportunities will be needed that are being explored now, not just because of the health crisis of COVID, but really because of the economic crisis that COVID is causing.
Speaking of economic crisis, David, in terms of financing, has COVID slowed down XM Bank? You told us your chair is out on a major tour of the Indo-Pacific up to this panel. But how are you seeing the COVID experience?
Sure. Well, obviously a huge challenge for many, also a source of potential opportunity. I would point to, in the interest of time, simply to the XIM website. If you do XIM and COVID, you'll see a series of resources that we put forward: a working capital guarantee program, a multi-buyer and single buyer short-term insurance policies that we've issued to exporters, various tools to get exporters through COVID currently in the current crisis. But I do want to pick up on what Todd was saying, and more broadly commend Todd and USTDA for their leadership. Biomedical sciences is an area, it's one of those transformational sectors that I referenced earlier, and it is a priority of XIM to help US exporters in the biomedical science sphere, particularly when it comes to when they're competing against Chinese state-backed competition. So it's an area of great importance, and one we embrace being very engaged in going forward.
So Chairman Bera, thank you, David. Chairman Bera, I want to give you and the ranking member a chance for a final word or two to bring us back home. Unfortunately, we've come up to the end of our time, but there's so much more we could have covered. And I don't know if you have any final words about how Congress is seeing the future of the Indo-Pacific and how you're going to lead the committee, at least through January of next year, and maybe beyond. So,
Alex, thank you for that. And I want to thank US-TDA as well as the Indo-Pacific Business Forum for this opportunity. I think regardless, Congress is going to continue to look at the vibrancy of the Indo-Pacific region from both a business perspective, the markets that are developing in this region, but then also from a strategic perspective. And that's not partisan, that's not Democratic or Republican. And I think the ranking member, I've had a great partnership in how we look at the opportunities, but then also some of the challenges in the region. So that won't change regardless of who's in control of Congress or who's in control of the White House. I think that trajectory will continue. So let me turn it over to my colleague, the ranking member, for closing thoughts.
Well, thank you. And I have to agree with you. I mean, you and I have gotten along so well on this committee, and we'd like to thank USTDA for this. Susan, you brought up something, that's, I don't think it's talked enough about. It's about the immense diversity in that area, and it's not a monolithic. And there are a lot of challenges in the world today, but with those challenges, I always view those as opportunities. And if we coordinate and we look at a country and we look at what is best for that country, whether it's infrastructure development, healthcare, governance, if we focus on those things and we collectively come together and we make those right decisions and investment, we can really change the trajectory of these countries to live a more prosperous, the idea is a more peaceful future for this generation and future generations to come. And if we do this, understanding the diversity, understanding the religions, the cultures, the economies, and then move them into the world and move them up the economic scales, man, I think the opportunity and the potential is unlimited. And I look forward to being a part of that in some capacity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman Bera, Ranking Member Yoho, Todd Abrajano, David Trulio, Susan Chodakewitz, and Shane TedJarati. Thank you so much for being a part of this panel. I think you've made it clear that the Indo-Pacific is the most consequential region of the world for the United States, indeed probably for the rest of the world as well, and that the United States has a real stake in the game, and that we are moving forward, and there are clearly demonstrated avenues for us to work together with our partners in Asia and move this region forward. So I want to thank all of you for being on the panel, and I wish everybody a good day. Thank you again.